Like, they don't seem like real men to me. That is not how I imagine a real man. Like, to me, when I think of a real man, the real man is not waxed from top to tail. Like, he's just not. You know, he doesn't spend like days lounging around in slides in a sunny apartment in Spain or Dubai. He's like working his ass off, you know, somewhere.
Welcome to Monogamish, the show where we reveal with fullness and clarity the true nature of all, yes, I said all, modern relationships in the modern monogamish relationship system. I am Douglas Aleutian, author of the forthcoming textbook for modern relationships called Monogamish, How the Matriarchy Came to Rule the World. My content aims to help men and women survive and thrive in this loneliness, epidemic, dystopian future that is here now and only getting worse. I am beyond the red pill to black pill acceptance and white pill hope. Today, we have two very special guests with us to discuss the new Netflix sensation called Inside the Manosphere. So we will discuss the Manosphere with women. Darleen, welcome back, Darleen. I like to call Darleen my New York correspondent. Darleen is an author and has been highlighting this recent trend of feminist regret, which is an amazing trend, I think, of women realizing that we are losing what's important for humanity in the pursuit of destroying the patriarchy. Darleen is the one who really had the insight after seeing this movie, brought it to my attention with the words, "You just got to watch it." I really think Darleen has a gift with her hands on the pulse of things. Darleen, tell us about your projects that you're working on to help pull us out of this madness.
Well, I've written a novel called Sexodus about a woman who goes after a man who'd done her wrong decades earlier, and he's MGTOW, and but he's also suicidal. That's a bit of a spoiler, and she wants to save him, metaphor, and also working on a collection of essays under the umbrella title Requiem for the Patriarchy. And once I get a little time, I'm going to start working on a memoir called My Dumb Feminist Life.
And you have Dogs Substack, right?
Yeah, but I am a cat lady.
But I know, that's...
Thank God for cats.
Yeah, the dogs food section now takes up 2 full aisles at Costco in my neighborhood. Where the diapers used to be.
Takes 3 aisles.
It's like a little... Jenny, welcome, Jenny. It's so nice to meet you. And
thank you.
I understand you are in Europe, even
Yes.
Ireland.
Yes.
Our first European correspondent. I love your logo. I love the statue of David looking into the phone. It's just great imagery. Your channel called Saving Culture from Itself is a great title that captures the internal nature of our struggle. I've been following you lately, another of what I call the rise of the women in the red pill space. I don't know if you would characterize it like I do, but I'm a big fan of this trend, and your content bringing sanity to the female side of things is just where they're just totally out of control everywhere else. You highlight how women cannot possibly be happy living in the woke paradigm, which I agree is an obvious condition that is plaguing the world. Please introduce yourself in your own words, and if you could tell us what you think is the biggest crux of this internal struggle of saving culture from itself.
Well, thank you, and thanks for asking me. So I started my Substack, Saving Culture from Itself, on the last day of 2020, after watching the rise of woke insanity for almost a decade, and actually even more than a decade. I left Brooklyn, New York, where I lived for a long time, and ended up back in Northern Ireland, where my father was from and where I went to high school, in part to escape what I saw as the coming battle, the culture war. And even though it didn't really have that name at the time, and I was like a pretty average, normal, progressive, liberal-ish. I think really I think obviously there's big political questions, and those are very interesting debates, and I'm very interested in having them. But I think really when it comes down to wokeness versus not wokeness, I think it's a question of temperament. I think there's some people who have very low tolerance for bullshit. And those people, those sort of blunt, impatient temperaments like my own, just can't really tolerate the cloying fakeness that masks this sort of implicitly homicidal cruelty that is woke ideology. So after watching this for a long time, I was getting so frustrated. I wanted to write again. I have a background in journalism and speechwriting and stuff like that. And so I started the Substack. I've just been plugging away at it for years, and saving culture from itself. I mean, it's kind of self-evident in that the main crisis that I see in the culture. Well, I started out thinking it was a cultural crisis or a political crisis. Then I thought it was a psychological crisis. And now I'm like, oh no, actually it's a spiritual crisis. But let's just for expediency, call it a cultural crisis, is being driven by this very influential, although numerically not that large, group of people who, being born into the most privileged and materially wealthy and sort of sanitary, safe societies ever to have existed in human history, took a look around and said, oh, this sucks. We're terrible people. We need to destroy it all. Now, women have been at the forefront of that, but men, I'm a very 50-50 person. Like, we have to share the blame equally here. But it is 100% a liberal phenomenon and a progressive phenomenon that has gone hand in hand with like the more kind of overtly neo-communist, neo-Maoist political, explicitly so, woke ideologues. Being a former liberal myself, although in aesthetics and in taste and in pastimes I remain a liberal, if not in opinions, liberals have just been running cover for these zealots, these tyrants, and they're a danger to humanity. That's my take.
Yeah, I like how you highlight the kind of the shifting sand nature of, well, what is it? We know something's wrong. I think everybody knows something's wrong.
Yes. Yeah, they do. They do. And it's painful to watch people who, everyone I know from the States, is a liberal or progressive or, a lefty of some description, centrist left. And it's painful to watch people who haven't been steeped in the insanity like I have start to ask questions like, wait, what are they doing with boys and women's in girls' teams? Why is there a man here in my dressing room? Like it's very painful to watch. I feel very bad for them actually, but it's also past time everybody woke the fuck up. So
I call those red pill moments.
Yes.
When people, the little light comes on, like, what is happening here? This is totally out of place with what I thought the world was.
They get these little inklings it's happening, but they're not fully aware of just how bad it is.
Yeah, and one side has absolutely no idea what the other side really thinks. Right?
Yes.
And it's kind of like an analogy for men and women.
Yeah.
Completely, and I would say post-feminism, completely misinterpreting the other and deciding that one is something that it isn't, right? Like,
Yes.
Men are like this when actually they're not like that.
That's exactly right.
And I think this documentary points that out really well.
Yes, the
Highlights
documentary.
that misunderstanding, and that seems to be its intention.
I guess we'll get into that. Is this documentary helping the situation or not? Let's talk about it. So the Netflix movie is out for I think a couple months now, going on a second month, I think, called Inside the Manosphere. It is being, from what I can tell by watching reviews on it, widely criticized for taking such a narrow view of the manosphere, making it look like the manosphere is made up of just toxic, borderline criminal, narcissistic PUA gym bros. The creator, Louis Theroux, he does admit, and I found this very interesting. It is in there. There's a very little spot in the movie where he admits that very quietly that he's only focusing on this little group. He says,
much of the manosphere is made up of relatively uncontroversial comedians and podcasters who broadcast about women, fitness, and wealth to a mainly male audience. But at its edges is a community of more extreme content creators. It was this world and its motivations I was most intrigued by.
But at its edges is a community of more extreme content creators. It was this world and its motivations I was most intrigued by. And so he does kind of admit that, there's a much bigger group, but then the whole movie goes into just rage baiting the left of this particular very small subset of people. So let me explain what my view of the manosphere is, having been inside it as much as anyone can be most of my entire life since the 90s. I consider the manosphere to be at least 30 years old, starting with Rush Limbaugh. And at least that's where I did it to, early talk radio, which was a manosphere audience of people discussing these issues that was actually the rise of the right during that time. Michael Savage, and then most importantly, the Godfather, Tom Leykis, which was huge here on the West Coast. I don't know, you guys might not have even heard of Tom Leykis, but I guarantee you'd be entertained and wildly surprised if you listen to one of his shows from the 90s. That was what I grew up on. This began the Red Pill movement, which wasn't even a thing until the movie Matrix was released in 97. And then there was the Fight Club, which is also a big Red Pill movie where they're bucking the system. And then later, the early internet came along with what we first started terming the manosphere or red pill, which I consider to be synonymous. And this is why I consider that, because that's where I come from. It was all part of the same thing. We had developments in the manosphere where it's really started to, multiply and divide into subgroups in the early 2010s, I would say, where it went into, I think, two big movements, the PUA and the MGTOW. P-Way pickup artists, MGTOW men going their own way. Fast forward to today, without going over each thing, I believe we have the latest developments being Tate and Myron Gaines' side of things, being on borderline criminal outlaws. And then there's deeper thinking authors like myself and you guys at the same time. And the introduction of women with influencers like Pearl and yourselves getting into the fray. There's a very large subset of women now who are identifying with anti-feminist trends, who were former Democrats and politically homeless by the far left insanity of what's happened with the bifurcation of weaponized feminism playing out in woke politics and George Floyd, Me Too madness, homeless industrial complex, and Renee Good. So the question for you guys is, do you see the Manosphere as being this limited thing like he's pointing out in the movie? Or how much do you see inclusive? Do you even see yourselves as being part of it?
I suppose you just gave me a history lesson there, Doug. Yeah. I didn't know about the long history of this. I'm familiar with the Manosphere in this sort of limited post woke way, and I think that from the about the documentary, I sort of thought I wasn't going to be able to watch it. I thought it was going to drive me insane with woke BS because number one, it was on Netflix. Number two, because it, I don't know a lot about Louis Theroux, but I just assumed that he was one of these sort of soy boys. And, he probably is, but my expectations were so low. Also, bear in mind, for context, like the UK is so bad in terms of its cultural output. They did a show last year, Netflix did it. It was a huge hit called Adolescence, which was supposed to be about sort of Manosphere-esque figures. And the plot revolved around a boy. I didn't watch it. And the boy was a little white boy. And it was, he was motivated by his Manosphere, like falling down the Manosphere rabbit hole. So I was just like, there's no way I'm going to watch even 30 seconds of that. I'm going to rip my television off the wall. That's like an affront to me and everyone I love. So I thought that I kind of expected that from the Manosphere documentary. So my expectations actually rose. Like it wasn't as bad as I thought. I don't like, my sense of the Manosphere is limited to this kind of what he was showing. I'm not aware of this older stuff from like the early internet days, but also what I think of the Manosphere that he displayed, I think of it as almost like a plastic surgery fad. Like I don't take it all that seriously because the men in it, and I said this with Megan Murphy when we discussed it on her live stream a month ago, like they don't seem like real men to me. That is not how I imagine a real man. Like to me, when I think of a real man, the real man is not waxed from top to tail. Like he's just not. He doesn't spend like days lounging around in slides in a sunny apartment in Spain or Dubai. He's like working his ass off, somewhere. And like, so that, like, I just think it's all just fake and very fake and and so maybe I don't take it as seriously as I should, but it seems like a lot of boys who are running around and preening, I should say, sorry, boys who have grown up in a very feminized society, boys who don't have fathers, very important, boys who imagine that this is how to be a man the way girls imagine like playing Barbies is how you are going to be a woman. Like it just doesn't bear any resemblance to reality. That kind of takes the sting out of it for me in terms of, is it a threat or should it be defended? I feel like it's a bunch of dumb kids doing dumb shit. And I'm not overly interested in that. It like from that perspective, I think, well, whatever. all young people are kind of dumb anyway, right? And we live in this incredibly image saturated society where we have, these men and women, young men and young women alike, are like deforming their bodies in a multitude of ways on the left and on the right. Image like Instagram and TikTok, these things like derange our brains. They reset our brains so that we feel like we're drawn to these pictures all the time. And I'm so glad that I'm in my 50s and I don't have to even think about this, but I don't think it's, even from I'm a sensible middle-aged lady, should I be worried about this? No, I'm not worried about it at all. And I feel like they'll probably grow out of it. Much like, OnlyFans girls, they're going to look back and think, oh, wow, I really shouldn't have done that. That was dumb.
Well, there's a big distinction between the manosphere, what it really is, and these guys who are people who've always existed. There's always been these people on the far extreme who are muscular and overly involved in their appearance and looking like, the most far out masculine creature possible. And on the other side of that is the Hooters woman, the Playboy bunnies and all of that. I mean, these people have always been here. And I would say, one of the most annoying things about this documentary was that it was presenting these people as if it's like a new thing. I mean, it's not even new in the sense that we had shock jocks and, really obnoxious, radio personalities like Howard Stern, for example. I mean, these are not guys that I ever would have come near in my life ever. They existed in another universe, because we have types of people, and these are a type, and they don't, to me, represent the manosphere. And what irritated me about the documentary was that it misrepresents it, and it is mocking what the manosphere truly is doing, which I think in a lot of ways is good for men. A lot of the content that I've seen is offering boys, young men who don't have fathers, some sort of masculine guidance. But these guys are on the, way, some of them, I would say a couple of them were sociopaths or psychopaths, actually. So we're going to present a couple of psychopaths and a sociopath as emblem.
And this is modern masculinity.
Yeah.
That's the message.
And this is why so many women, are, what impression they have of men vis-a-vis the lens of feminism in the first place. So I was sitting in the sauna at the Y, and there was a Gen Z woman in there. I can't say woman, I have to say girl. And I walked in and she was telling this other woman about Palestine and how she's going to have a heart attack over Palestine. And I'm like, oh no, here we go. And then she started talking about inside the manosphere, and she was using the words like, the way they were talking about sex was all violence. And I said, I saw it. That's not, I mean, these guys are just cartoons, like masculine cartoons. Yeah. And a lot of it was bluster. And I'm highly skeptical that this is exactly what goes on in the bedroom, the way they were talking anyway. But yeah, she was using all that jargon, violence, and then she started bragging about how you couldn't pay her to have a child, and all of that. And this is the type. These kinds of men are the reason, why she would never have a child, because the whole world of men is like this.
So that's a good introduction into the next question. There's this intersexual misunderstanding that we keep hinting at, and I do believe that the political sides are proxies for the sexes also. And, my question that I'm always kind of coming back to is, are both sides an existential threat to each other? That's how it gets framed, and I think this movie it does kind of hint at that. Louis Theroux is obviously on the blue pill side, but he's pointing out that this trend of masculinity is a clear existential threat. And you know, later in the film, he goes on to kind of bring up Trump was elected by these guys, and Andrew Tate wants to be the Prime Minister of UK. And so do you guys feel the same way? Do you think that do you think the blue pill is an existential threat? Or I call the blue pill just generally, you know, the left. Are they an existential threat? And are both sides an existential threat to each other? And that seems to be the dilemma to me. Jenny?
Yeah, I mean, I think that woke ideology is an existential threat. And I think there's a lot of people who are trapped in an information ecosystem who you would probably call blue pill, but I'm not quite willing to write them off. Although, you know, I mean, we live in two separate news information systems, entirely separate, and there's very little crossover between them. And I know I can trust my sources because of my checklist of, okay, do these outlets or do these podcasters or whatever, do they adhere to reality, i.e. men cannot lactate? Okay, we've passed that bar. We can proceed with a modicum of trust. So
they're not completely insane.
They're not completely insane. You know, we're free to disagree on other matters, but like that's like a pretty foundational one. So I don't think the blue pill people are an existential threat. I think the ideology in which that shapes their world is an existential threat to them. Primarily to them, because not like you said when we first got on the call, Doug, you live in Seattle, which has the lowest number of children and the highest number of dogs. I mean, this is what gives me the white pill. It sounds like kind of creepy and like gross, like eugenicist-y, but like I don't mean it like that. But okay, you know, up until the 9th month, SSRIs and birth control, like these people aren't breeding. So this problem is going to work itself out in a generation or two anyway. Like, let's just like all take like just relax for a second. Whereas right-wing people are having more children. So, you know, although probably maybe not enough to save us. I don't know. So I think maybe I wouldn't put it in such stark terms as the blue pill people are an existential threat, but how we wrest power back from the institutions is a totally different question.
Okay, what about Darleen? Do you think the blue pill is an existential threat?
Yeah, I mean, literally a belief system that is leading to not reproducing. Fractured relationships, family estrangement over ideology.
Yeah,
over
add
who
the
you
climate,
voted for.
the climate people.
I mean, and they're the ones who are cutting people off, and they're the ones who are cutting off their own noses despite their faces by not reproducing. You know, I don't know how much more of an existential threat you can get if people are adhering to an ideology that's convincing them that all men are bad and they shouldn't reproduce. And I find it really alarming that so many people don't see that. Like, it's just so obvious. You know, we have now in New York this idea that white people should get taxed more. I mean, you know, how, I mean, already just going back to, you know, some of the woke stuff that really threw me over the edge, like white people saying, I'm so ashamed of being white. Like, can you not see the telos of that? Like, can you not see what that's going to wreak upon us? So now it's perfectly okay to machete an old white person in the subway and, oh, he's upset because his mother died, you know. And
childhood
existential
trauma.
threat also, not putting people in prison who definitely deserve to be there, empirically so, until they actually do kill a whole bunch of people, and then maybe we'll consider locking them up. That is a threat. I mean, that's why I won't buy into this. You couldn't convince me. It's dangerous, and it seems obvious to me that it's by design to destroy the West.
And if you watch a No Kings protest or something like that, that is full of these blue pill sided people, they clearly think that Trump and MAGA is an existential threat.
They do. They genuinely think that. I mean, the people on the ground, the boomers, but I mean, I don't know if the people pulling the strings really do think that. Maybe some do, but probably don't. Most don't. There's bound to be a few smart people in there somewhere. But the people on the ground really, really do think that. They genuinely, genuinely think that.
Yeah, I have a girlfriend that didn't come out of her house for a full year after Trump got elected because she was afraid that she would be so angry that she would attack somebody violently on the street. Right?
Oh my God. Wow.
It's real. Yeah. So, okay, well, yeah, those are great answers that still kind of leave that question in the positive that both sides still do kind of see each other, not fully, but it varies, as being, and that's a strange condition that we're in to have that. Another trend is the childhood trauma psychology trend. And Lewis, he really pushed that narrative in the movie. I know he's playing this role of stoking the ire and rage baiting the blue people watching, the blue pill people watching. So the left is really crafty and subtle at using this subtext in their baiting of the pearl clutchers. And those blue pill people are watching, they're thinking, these guys are narcissists and they need therapy. And so then he feeds that. He says in his conclusion is that they must have childhood trauma. And of course he has to go there. This whole movie is feeding this ignorance of the modern college-educated class that's spoon-feeding them the hatred that they want to consume. And it's like he also kind of treats it like a true crime documentary, which is their favorite thing. And you can see how excited he is to get the women involved, like the mother of H.S. Tiki Talk and the wife of Justin, and to make this division between Myron Gaines and his girlfriend, Angie. And he really tries to get on the woman's side and identify with her feelings. And
he also behaved in a rather paternal way towards these guys. Like, I'm the blue pill dad that you didn't get.
Yeah.
But he's willing to connect the dots that these guys, most of them grew up with a single mother. And, and then by the same token, he's getting on their cases for, seeing women as, potential mothers, right? Domestic, in charge of the domestic sphere, as if there's a problem with that. Like, what's wrong with these guys for seeing women like that? But they grew up
but
in the
isn't
blue
that
pill
typical,
household,
though? Isn't
basically.
is that is what I call these guys, simps. He's playing the role of appeasing the woman, and he's trying to correct these guys, but of course, it has to be the trauma that's causing it. It can't be that they're responding to the facts on the ground. It has to be that their childhood trauma is is the source. Do you guys, do you think that's true? Do you think that it's childhood trauma that's causing these guys to be this way, or could it be something else?
Well, specifically these guys, I don't know if it's childhood trauma, but no, I would call it maybe social trauma, like growing up in a world that has destroyed positive masculinity, like in an old fashioned, like what I would consider to be sort of old fashioned traditional masculinity, and that like the big hairy man who works all the time. Like that's like what dads, that's what dads are. They used to all be that, except for like the very rich. That's gone. I mean, you have these weedy, white collar, dads, and I know you still have blue collar dads, but like from out of the culture, that's kind of disappeared. And I think that left these men, rudderless without a North Star. So I don't know if that amounts to childhood trauma. It's not about childhood trauma, but it is. I do actually think, and I've said this many times, and I always caveat it saying, I know it sounds hyperbolic, but I don't think it is hyperbolic to say that poor parenting has brought about this civilizational crisis. That is my firm belief, because the absolute drop off in mental wellness between Gen X and millennials and Gen Z is so extreme, and part of that is because we stopped raising children to be robust and resilient. And we've either spoiled them on one hand, they can't face consequences. They can't mess up and learn how to pick themselves up and carry on. We always run interference for them on that level when it comes to their own competencies. But then on the other hand, we blame them, or we fill their heads with terror about white privilege and climate change and rape culture. So like not in modern history have we ever done this before. And that, I think, that's part of one of the main sources of wokeness, one of the main emotional drivers. But these guys, yeah, they're fatherless kids.
But again, it's all progressive stuff that's causing the trauma. Like,
that's what's causing it. Yeah. Yeah. The trauma is caused
complete instability of the home. Do what you please for yourself. Do it for yourself. They are absolutely hyperbolic examples, ironically, of what is preached on that, in that mindset. Did you see H.S. Tiki Taki's mother?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's the one. Is he the one with the rugby player father from Africa or something?
Yeah.
What do you think happened back there? I mean, this is the funny thing: childhood traumas.
Yeah, what happened between those two?
Meanwhile, every sort of new rule or new freedom is actually exacerbating the childhood trauma problem. But yeah, what was going on there? What do you think happened in that relationship? Do you think it might have been, oh, I'm going to have this baby and I don't need you? Do you think it could have been that?
Or he was a narcissist and she got rid of him because he was causing her problems.
There's plenty of men who've left behind a trail of abandoned children. Like that's pretty common.
That could be too, but we know that over the last 20 odd years, I'm going to have this baby and I don't need you is also pretty prevalent. So
yeah. I found his mother to be quite an affecting character. I really felt for Harrison. I didn't, again, because my expectation was so low of the entire thing, I really didn't, I was almost disarmed by how I didn't hate it as much as I did. And I found Harrison in particular to elicit my maternal feelings of sort of compassion. And I could see this young boy. I could see the young boy in him who was angry and had a lot to prove. And the saddest thing about it to me is that these are young men with ambition. And it's been directed in this most sort of materialistic and glib and dumb, it's just a dumb way to live, really. I mean, I guess you can do what you want, technically, whatever. But like, these are boys that have ambition and drive and want to really achieve something. And they are, the entire society is set up for them to not be able to do that. So, they went and they found, like little pioneers, they went and they found this out patch of the internet and they staked their claim to it. And, they're getting what they want, or what they say they want for now. But I felt for that kid. I felt like he was, I could see the angry child in him for sure.
My favorite HS Tiki Taki line is, "See you later, you German tarts."
How to use that?
I mean, he was like comically abusive.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got some charisma for sure. Those are great answers, and it kind of goes with a big point that I've been trying to make, which I call the real trauma, which is the trauma of what I call the monogamish, matriarchal blue pill world. That's what's creating this childhood trauma. And I have to ask, I have to wonder, are these guys just responding to the conditions on the ground? Another big concept of mine is a thing called hybristophilia, which hasn't been super well developed yet, but I've been developing it. It's this attraction to criminals that women have, this trend of the bad boy. And these guys are all bad boys. Aren't they filling that trend that women are responding to? And isn't that a bigger part of what draws women, especially young women? What's really happening in this video, I see, is Lewis is arguing the good guy case. And these guys are arguing the case that good guys are getting screwed in the real world. And they're screwed in the job market. They're screwed in college admissions. They're screwed on every metric where they're worse off than past generations. And a lot of young men aren't getting any female attention. If they do get married, they're screwed in married, they're divorce raped and punished for doing the right thing. So can you really blame these guys for abandoning the system and going, in their own way, what they think is actually better for them?
Yeah, I mean, and they had to find their own, like Jenny said, they had to find their own way of becoming what they want to become. It's like I showed up at this Substack event and I was the only woman in there. It was all white guys. And I was like, oh, here, it was a literary event. And it was like, oh, here they are. They just created their own masculine literary world, a para literary world. That's what guys do. And the women want
You can't stop the human spirit.
The women want to infiltrate their spaces, and they just keep creating their own spaces.
Yeah, they're going off script.
They need their they need their men's spaces, and so it's I just saw I read an article, something like the incels are taking over the internet, and it was also really clear. It was,
oh my God, what is it, 2012?
Persuasion, and and it was the same kind of completely ignoring the biological reality of the sexes. Like, how dare you assume that men might find women attractive, and that middle beta men might want to get married and have a family. How dare they feel so aggrieved that they're not getting any attention, and that they are being sidelined from so many industries and all, how dare they? So now they're taking over the internet. Those
That's just I guess that story just does the rounds every few years because that's like keeps coming
Be
back.
scared.
This incel story.
Be
storyline.
scared. Men want a place in the world. Be afraid.
Yeah, exactly.
The incel word is really getting popular with the femcel women. I found that's another. The femcel is the inverse of wimcel.
Incel.
I just made a new one up.
I would also
But to your point about the bad boys thing, I mean, that's a tale as old as time. Literally a tale as old as time. I mean, Lord Byron got laid all the time. You know what I mean? He never stuck around and supported his baby mamas. You know, like, what about the greasers in the 1950s? Like, that's literally the human condition. That's always been the way. And I mean, okay, left-wing women take it to new levels. I literally know someone who met a double murderer in prison where she was teaching an art class and married him, and he had murdered his wife and her lover. So that's a left-wing woman for you. But, you know, so that, yeah, we have, like, left-wing women have a particular pathology for this. But again, it's not new. I mean, okay, I think the internet is probably the first new thing under the sun when it comes to sexual relations. Since, I don't know, the dawn of time. I think the internet really is mostly a tool. I think it's becoming embodied to a degree that is a bit alarming. But, you know, if you take a few steps back and just see it as an influence, not a or even like a communication a speeding up of communication between men and women. I don't think, like, I know that this is why I'm not really a conservative, because I don't think the way conservatives conceptualize women is very sophisticated, and it doesn't really reflect the depths of women's cunning and ability to strategize and moral courage, actually, and deviancy and all these things. And neither can the feminists. The feminists can only see women as blameless. And I think conservatives can only see women as innocent, and women have never been innocent, ever. Like, look at Eve. I mean, Eve is such a true character, because that's such a woman thing to do, to be like, actually, I think I maybe will take a bite of the apple. I think I think that's going to be
good. Hanging out
I'll
with
do
the
it.
snake.
Yeah, you know, just like, I think I'm going to do it. And, you know, like, that's a woman thing to do. That is so resonant of what women are like. But we are also incredibly resourceful and industrious, and we've been keeping the ship going for, you know, the entirety of the human race until we ran smack into woke ideology. And women are particularly susceptible to it because it hijacks all of our empathy drives. And yeah, so I don't, the bad boy thing is funny to me in a way because it's so obvious, but it's, you know, the most dark, I think, example I saw of it was, you know who Bonnie Blue is? She's really famous over here in the UK. A truly vile creature, a succubus, an actual succubus, had to sit down with Andrew Tate, who's also a vile creature. What's a male succubus called? I don't know, a demon. Anyway, and I had to watch it because it spiked. The magazine paid me to write about it, and the way she was trying to play him and manipulate him and ingratiate herself to him literally looked like two imps, like in like an antechamber of hell. And he was slightly disarmed by it. It was actually a very interesting interaction, if very unpleasant, because I don't like watching demons operate. I prefer to avoid them altogether. But, you know, she was obviously sort of playing at submission for him in order to, because she, as a status move, want to be his number one concubine. I don't know. What do they call them?
I saw that, and I got the same impression that she was trying to work him over.
She was trying to work him over, and but this is a tale as old as time. This is what women do. This is how women have survived, actually, to a large extent. When you had marauding gangs of Mongols or Persians or whatever the hell, this is how women survived. So, like, you can't entirely blame us. But, you know, we had to use our wily tricks in order to not, die at the end of the sword.
Blame, but what was, you mentioned Eve and her sin? What was Adam's sin? This is about the point I always bring
going along with it.
That he listened, he hearkened to the woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so he got duped.
But also, the feminist lens on that is that Eve, that's a patriarchal story, and that Eve's character is misogyny. So anything that women do to use their wily ways is misogyny. This is just the way men perceive women because they're misogynists.
Isn't it like, you remember do you remember being a 12-year-old girl, Darlene? When I remember being a 12-year-old girl, a 13-year-old girl, and when you're really young like that, when you're just a kid, you're defensive and you sort of puff yourself up to try and cope with the feelings of inadequacy that you rightly have because you are inadequate, because you're unformed, and so you can't. It's hard to say you can't really listen to criticism because it's so threatening because you're so unformed, right? You're not robust enough yet. And that's what feminists sound like all the time, even when they're 70, even when they're 80. Like, that's what they sound like. They do not sound like they are it is the most immature and most blindly false set of political beliefs I have ever heard in my entire life. And I cannot believe that after all of these years, what are we, 100 years in, maybe a bit more, that this is still being taken seriously.
It really is like perennial childishness and railing against, the fact that you're designed to reproduce, and
I think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, that's I'm more than that, right?
As if there's anything more than that. Like, as if there's anything more important in this entire world than that.
Now
that is literally the most important thing in the world.
Because you didn't even do that.
And there's women that are, not childish. And they're the ones that I see, like you guys, that are reasonable and rational and more mature, they're not in that childlike state of, stomping their feet and using whatever power they can to dominate for their own sake without any concept of a higher good, that's going on. And this women's trend in the Manosphere is those women that are saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't agree with this. We don't all think this way. And they get called by the other ones, they get called pick-me's. That's the slam. Well, because you're not down for the cause, you're a pick-me.
Yeah. Did you ever get called that, Darlene?
Comments on some of the videos I've done. She's a pick-me.
Really? That's so funny.
It couldn't be that you're intelligent and free thinking.
Yeah. But also, pick me for what? The freaking Glee Club? Like, I'm sorry, I'm a middle-aged lady. Nobody's picking me for anything.
The irony about these guys in this documentary is they're like the male version of feminists.
Yes. That's exactly. I agree.
Men are just there to inseminate me when I'm ready to have a baby at 45. And then I send him on his way, and then I realize how expensive it is, and then I take him to court, which is something I've seen numerous times. Right? I don't need you. They're actually like the feminists of the male, the male counter.
Which is why they zeroed in on that. That way they can say, that's what it is. It's not these smart people who are looking at big picture, real problems that's killing our civilization. It's not, those people don't exist. It's just all us blue pill people on Netflix that want to turn Netflix into, our little gay porn site. And that's what I call it, because I too can't watch Netflix because I'm ambushed by gay porn in every movie that they have.
Yeah. Within I think I've got several pilots a quarter watched because the transgender person came in. I'm not.
That's right. That's an immediate turn
Yeah.
off. Yep. Boop, done.
And there was one where the transgender woman was a cop, and the black higher rank officer he's writing with says, "I understand you and I'm here for you," and she's crying. I'm like, okay, I'm not buying that this person is male, and I'm not buying this relationship between these two characters at all. I'm sorry, no. Yeah, but you know,
It's interesting you say that it's like feminist, because that's what I thought when I fell into a rabbit hole, I guess, not that long ago, talking to somebody called Bill Price. Do you know who he is, Doug? He had a website.
No, it sounds familiar though, but I can't place it.
The Revenant or something. He had a website in the early Manosphere days, Royce time. I don't know. All of this stuff was unknown to me at the time. I was I just had my son, and I wasn't online that much. That was going back all those years. Anyway, I went and I found this old website. It was archived. It's no longer there. And it was all like, asking women to rate themselves and it was kind of like a PUA thing, kind of like a pickup artist thing, like, how to game women, essentially. And I really remember thinking, like, this is all very girlish, actually. Like, I genuinely feel that, I feel like I'm quite I have quite traditional views on how men and women act, not because I'm traditional, but that's because I've observed it in the wild. Like, I was a girl. I remember being a girl. I remember seeing what boys were like. And when I was a girl, I was like boy crazy. I was like, oh, does this boy like me? And then your friends, all of your friends are in the same boat. Does this boy like me? Does this boy like you? And chat. That's kind of, it really preoccupies, it occupies a lot of your mind when you're a young girl. Like, how do you get the boys' attention? God forbid you get the attention. It's quite awful and scary, and you run away again. It's all very innocent. This is, again, normal stuff. This is like how people have been acting for millennia. And then you have this PUA stuff, which is like, why are you thinking about women so much? Like, this is weird. Like, I know, and I was living in a world, I still thought it was the 90s, maybe. I didn't realize, I didn't know any of these crazy women at the time, and I still don't, actually. People in my life are pretty normal, but, this upset, like, don't text back right away. Don't do this. Don't do that. It sounded like that scene in Grease when they're all sitting together in the room, and Sandy gets her ear pierced, and they're going through the names of the boys, and like they're trying to strategize like how to get them to pay them attention. It's like, this is very girlish. I feel like everyone should have better things to do with their time. I understand the desire to mate. It's like to get laid, frankly. Like, I get it, but like, do people not go to bars anymore and just do this like in the wild?
No.
Like, is this really? No.
I took the rating. I actually took the rating, and I was like, at the top.
Oh, I did recently. It was hilarious. I took the rating. It was like minus 1,000.
What is this rating system?
Somebody sent it to me. It's really old. Like, it's on a really old website too. And you, like, if you have a big ass, like shaped like this, then you get 10 points. If you wear this size bra, you get this point. Take away this many points if you have this color hair. But, you remind me, like, I mean, when I was a teenager, the guys we wanted looked like Robert Plant. And then the second tier was Jimmy Page. You wanted a blonde guy with really long curly hair and skin tight jeans, and we had them all listed. And then they had to have a certain kind of car, and if they had a motorcycle, they got 20 points. If they only had a car, minus 30. So, I mean, that women would get so upbraided over men rating them, even when the whole online dating thing, as far as I understand, is pretty much, put the fake picture up or make yourself look like something you're not in order to catch a fish. That's the other thing about feminism in general that I find so irritating, is that it's just not self-aware. It's pointing the finger and saying, you're doing this when, like the women are doing it even worse. I would even go so far as to say that, men are attracted to women, more visually stimulated than women are. But they're also, I would say, much more realistic in a lot of ways about who they choose for a mate. They're far more practical. and judicious in my experience, because I got tossed to the curb so much, and maybe I'm not presenting myself in the best possible way. I was talking like a feminist.
I think it's projection. That's why I'm always saying gaslight and projection is what the main tools of the left. And that's a good segue into the next question. I wonder who is worse, the young men who appreciate Andrew Tate or the woke radicalized women who don't need a man. From my point of view, these late stage metastasized woke feminist, communist, antichrist, TRD women are much more dangerous than the young men who just want to not be neutered. These are found both in the young girl boss groups and the older Karen group. These are women who will either never have a family or nuke their own families. Renee Good is an example of the story I feel that was never really told, is her previous relationships and her divorces and children prior to becoming a radicalized protester with her new lesbian wife. So who do you think is actually more dangerous for civilization? Is it these young guys that are trying to get laid and drive a nice car, or is it these radicalized, what I call metastasized feminist, young and older women?
Yeah, it's definitely the women. Yeah. I mean, the women have all they have all the institutional power. I mean, if the shoe was on the other foot, and it was women like with following Andrea Dworkin or something, I don't know, and men still ruled all the institutions, and the ideology was this sort of like Andrew Tate ideology, I would say, yeah, okay, obviously the men, but that's not the case. The institutions are all woke. They're all woke. They're not stopping to be woke. And so, yeah, it's Andrew Tate is a sideshow.
Yeah, and that's the crux of it, isn't it? These guys are looking for guidance. A lot of these, I would say that Justin Waller, I found Louis Theroux's treatment of him. Everything that Waller was saying, I agree with. Didn't sound extreme to me.
Yeah, he's the most sensible one on there, I think.
You're such a misogynist. And he was basically describing, being really ambitious, being confident in yourself, building your business, not taking shit from people.
God forbid.
And I think a male sitting in a classroom with nothing but female teachers and getting this toxic messaging, which is another thing I was thinking about recently. When I went to school, it was the women who were the teachers in grade school. And then when we got older, it was mostly men who were our teachers. I'm reporting from the last gasp of the patriarchy, but in high school, most of the teachers were actually men. And I would say there's more of a 50-50 in junior high, and then there were a couple of male teachers, and our principals were all male. In my grade school, and everybody loved Mr. Costanza, by the way. So the one male teacher, everybody worshiped this guy. But now it really is the case, isn't it, that it's mostly female teachers throughout their entire schooling, and they're just not getting any. And that was also what was so problematic about that TV series, Adolescence. The episode where he's sitting in the interrogation room with a female therapist made me want to, throw the TV across the room. This kid is being condescended to by women everywhere he goes. So what do you think is going to be the result of that? And it's almost like they seem to know what they're doing, and they're like poking the dead dog with the stick, Why would women want to destroy men? Because that does
They're
seem
hurt.
to be
They're
they're claiming that they were oppressed and that the men owned them and all of this, but which isn't really true. Again, it's a way of thinking that is predicated on a very small subset, right? Like transgender. Now we all have to ask everybody what their pronouns are when there's really, or there used to be anyway, a very small percentage of people who with this issue, right? So there was domestic abuse and there were problems in some marriages. Ergo, let's just blow the whole thing up.
I think women don't understand men. I don't think men understand women particularly either, but women really don't understand men, at least in our current culture, at least in liberal, laptop class demographics.
We call it gynocentric. So the women's culture
it is gynocentric.
Is the culture.
I think women are very good at reading each other. And don't understand men, and that frustrates us. That causes pain and rejection. We perceive rejection, and then I mean it's there's all for two sexes that are mutually codependent for survival. Like there's all sorts of things there's all sorts of wires that get crossed, and we just used, and that's always been the case. We just used to have society bounded by norms, where you had to abide by the norms. You had to like it or lump it. And girls who had their hearts broken were told just to get over it. Tough shit. You got to marry the plumber, not the prince. Sorry, you're not pretty enough to marry the prince. Like that's just what, and then we all just got on with it, and
Well, I would say that.
And we had a civilization that was reproducing.
Well, I would say also that's what really started this ball rolling was the idea, and I remember this started pretty much when I was a teenager. Oh, there's no difference between men and women. We're the same, and we shouldn't act like there's a difference. Well, if you keep harping on that, then you're going to be disappointed in men when they're not like you. And I actually really struggled with that. And I had brothers and I played mostly with boys. And yet I did get so subsumed in this brand new idea of how we're going to be living that actually, the more I think about the angle on this, my story, it really is like I knew that this was true, but I was being told that I had to believe this and that I had to do this, and that two forces were basically just pulling at me, and and I wound up just dangling in a liminal space. He's supposed to be my best friend and everything is dependent upon him, and we're supposed to like all the same things. And there's nothing that's going to ruin a relationship more than, forcing two people to like all the same things and be together all the time. And as it used to be, and this is Camille Paglia talking, it used to be that women ran two different domains. And they were at the top of the one domain, and the men were outrunning the other one. And that's my proposal. The only way to get society to start functioning again is to recognize that there is a difference, and to not for women to stop expecting men to be like women, and let men be men, and let them have their space, and let them have their world. And I'm not saying that women should leave the workplace. However, when you say, the woke has taken over everything, I'm starting to think,
is there a connection?
we've got to get more men into these places, to balance it out.
They've all been sent away. They've all been fired or
but
not hired.
You're describing my monogamish idea of this is what modern relationships are. It's this confusion that's based on the one big lie, which is that there's no difference between men and women. And that's just blatantly not true. That's just a complete fabrication of reality. And they're just been force feeding this idea. And then you try to incorporate that into a relationship, and then you have this battle of wills that's going on between two completely different mental constructs that are both competing with each other, and the women have more power in the current system, and the men's tools of power have been removed, and so eventually the women just run ruckshot over the men in most of these relationships.
There's also just a complete
and it's a completely dysfunctional system.
And the obliviousness to expecting him to do an equal amount of housework when he's been working all day. And then she goes to work and she's working 40 hours a week. And now they're fighting over who washes the dishes and who takes out the garbage. So that's the other thing. This whole idea that, you need to set up your career first, and then maybe you'll get around to having children and creating a family. It just doesn't work.
It's not compatible.
Yeah.
With having children and a family. And we're seeing that. The first time in human history that over 50% of women over 30 don't have children. That's a huge statistic. That's never happened before. That's where it's headed.
I was just listening to Chris Williamson, Theroux on Chris Williamson, and he was talking about how his mother worked, and that the way these guys, see women as, they shouldn't be working or whatever. He said that was just so foreign to him. But, I think he's probably...
he's got that boomer mindset, that boomer feminist boomer mindset.
How did his mother manage to have children and then work? I would like to see, how that worked out, because I would say that actually happens to a very small subset of people.
We never hear the rest of the story on those things, Yeah. Let's switch the question here to a new question. Something that I found really striking in the movie was that, in spite of the negative PR campaign that Lewis was trying to make, you kept seeing these incidences where the guys were out in public, and then some other guys would walk up or run up to them and thank them and want to take selfies with them. And Justin said something really important, I think. He said, "I get stopped every day by a man who tells me I saved his life." And this loneliness epidemic is a real thing that's killing. It's the biggest killer of people under 50, believe it or not, through addiction and the way that goes. And I've actually had a similar experiences. Even recently, last week, I was out filming some drone footage up on the river, and I ran into these guys up there. And, it happens a lot, one thing leads to another. And these are young guys, and we're talking about my content and what I'm working on. And these guys they're like 20, and they tell me, thank you for what you're doing. We need you. We don't have anyone. And these are young Christian guys that go to church, and they tell me they want to get married, but they don't know how that's ever going to happen. And they told me that their parents divorced when they were young, and it was their mom who took a flamethrower to the family. It just like the trend it has been. And I really get the idea that young men in particular just don't have a voice. And I want to ask you guys if you've had any experience besides the negative flack that you get for going against the narrative. Have you had people that you meet in real life that recognize that their voices that aren't being heard, that really want to be heard? Jenny?
Not exactly. No. I don't. Maybe it's because I don't live in the United States. I see. It's either because I don't live in the United States, but also probably more likely I am retardedly optimistic as a person. I don't understand why. But I know, a fair number of young people, teenagers, and with broadly speaking, they are well-adjusted, pretty sane, not consumed by online discourse. They don't take the online discourse very seriously, especially the boys. I don't know about the girls. The boys I know do not take it seriously. They think it's entertainment. They think it's comedy, essentially. And I do think boys have a voice. Young men have a voice. I think that's why Nick Fuentes has millions and millions of followers. I think the loneliness epidemic, is real. I do believe that. But I think that a lot of it is amplified. A lot of the kind of doom narrative is amplified in online spaces. And I think there's still millions of people who are out there just living their lives differently to the way I lived mine when I was a young person, but they're still living them. But sorry, Darleen, I'll let you answer as well.
Yeah. I actually think, interestingly enough, the doom comes from the blue side, doesn't it? The planet's going to burn up. Men are bad. There's no good reason to have children, all of this. And then you have these guys who are being told that they're toxic and they're bad. It's all coming from that, place. And these guys in the Manosphere are trying to give these guys some hope. And I find it extremely dark that there is so much pushback against this. Watch out. You might actually have to have children and make a family because of Donald Trump. Like presenting what humans have done for thousands of years as like the seventh circle of hell. And this woman in the sauna said that she has some kind of immune problem. And then last night I was at an event and everybody people I was meeting, they were all wearing the dumb masks. And,
oh my God.
And then I said, do I need a mask to sit in the seats with you guys? I should have said that, God. But I get triggered by the masks. And then he said, his daughter's girlfriend has an immunodeficiency or whatever. And this woman I was sitting in the sauna with said that she had that. And I'm like, okay, now that's like the latest excuse to wrap yourself up in a cone and not have children. And the woman who was sitting there, probably very entertained by this, she said, that's so, that's so giving of you to not subject a child to your illness. And so this is what's passing for wisdom.
Well, let's wrap up with anything that we didn't talk about. I have one thing that I discovered that's additional to this movie is I had to get a Netflix, pay them the money to watch it, and there's another movie that was also on there called The Social Dilemma, and I watched that, and in that one, the narrative is focused on this. They're talking about what the technology is doing to us, and modern internet technology, and they have this family, and in this family, there's a one young man in there who's a teenager, and the technology is manipulating him. They're showing how the technology is manipulating him as they portray the algorithm that is a group of these people, this fictional group of white men, tech bros, and they're standing around in their little tech lab, and they're making decisions on what inputs to send the young man through his phone so that he stays active on the system that makes them money. And I just thought, well, yeah, that's, you know, they're saying this is the technology, but I think deeper, this has to be the narrative. The narrative has to be that the young man is being manipulated. And that's why he's coming up with these strange, toxic ideas. The narrative can never be that the young man is an intelligent, free-thinking, critical thinking individual who's assessing the situation on the ground and dealing with and correcting for problems like any man would do. And I think that is what the young men are actually trying to do.
The women are being manipulated, actually, and maybe the men are not so easily manipulated.
Projection again.
That's a good place to
projection
land.
So, what do you guys think? You know, that points that were not, you know, part of the movie that came up for you.
So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right, Darlene. I think women are being more manipulated than the girls are being more manipulated than the boys. I do think that's true. Although I have to say, funnily enough, that the few people, the nastiest of the encounters, I've never had a nasty encounter with my friends, my female friends from my liberal days. They haven't come at me, but the men have, in very nasty ways, in very bitchy, very malevolent little ways, actually. So, I always come back to the 50-50. I think for every, I think blame is there's enough blame to spread around, but 100% I agree with you, Darlene, that the women are being more manipulated. And Doug, I've been saying that thing about that storyline forever. They have to blame it. The liberal narrative has to blame it on the narrative. They can never admit that it's actually because these people are saying things that are true. And that's why Andrew Tate got famous in the first place, because he said things that were true. And as unpleasant as he was, and as gross as he turned out to be, it doesn't invalidate the fact that he said stuff that was true.
Well, thank you. And both of you, thank you for coming. And it's great to meet you for the first time, Jenny.
Same.
And I really appreciate the balanced viewpoints of women, especially, that you guys bring. And I think that we really did kind of summarize the sort of projection level of what's happening with this movie. Is let's laser focus on these guys over here and not talk about any of the other stuff. So I'm gonna get going too, and tell the audience that thank you for watching, and subscribe to all three of these channels here, and check out the Jenny's channel and Darlene's channel. They're doing big things, and I think that the Manosphere is evolving, and I think that you're seeing it here. I have a lot to come, I want to do a show about, where is this all going. That's what's really interesting to me. We'll see you soon.